Welcome to the Free Range Families podcast, where we, Britt
and Christina, show you the beauty of homeschooling through a lens of faith
and freedom,
and always a bit of humor. Welcome to a very different looking podcast today. We have our Tres Amigas.
It's not just the Britt and Christina show today.
It's the Britt, Christina, Suzette, Lisette, and Priscilla show.
Yes.
There's a lot of us here.
Yes.
And it's going to get loud.
Yes. And there's a reason for this, right? Yes. What's our reasoning?
So we wanted to bring in, we obviously are out of Tucson, Arizona. And so we wanted to bring in a different perspective on homeschooling that is...
You don't see very often.
You don't see very often. And we want to talk about why maybe you don't see that very often. And we're bringing in the Mexican and Hispanic and the Latino version of homeschooling and tell us their story.
And they're part of our co-op, so we know these.
These are like our
ladies.
besties.
Yes. And so it was a big ask, but it's a demographic that you don't see very often. So within our homeschooling,
and we'd like to,
and we want to know why, and also just to get their backgrounds and their feeling on what it's like to be Hispanic homeschooling in Arizona. And you totally don't need to be nervous because we're having a conversation.
It's totally just a conversation.
I love it. Okay, so go, Christina. You're off first. Off to the rodeo. Our first question. We have questions written down. You're supposed to ask some questions.
I know, but I'm just letting you get it
fine.
all out. I'll ask a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You are all some lovely ladies and our friends.
Yes.
And we are very grateful that you took the time out to do this. So we want to know, we're anxious to show the world that you're part of the homeschooling community, that it's not just like, I think there's like a stigma around, obviously there's a stigma around homeschooling in general. Yes. But I think there's also a stigma against cultural aspects of homeschooling. So we want to kind of break through that stigma, I should say. Yep. You fill a very unique demographic in our world. And obviously, because we're close to the Mexican border, we have a huge population that I think people are not understanding that homeschooling can happen in this community. So, I would love to hear from you guys your experience of what does your culture say about homeschooling? What do you hear
education
about it?
In general?
Yeah,
in no particular order.
No, just start talking.
Okay.
We're all looking at the side.
You got the middle seat. You got the hot seat, kid.
And one hair.
I know.
So pretty.
So your question is homeschooling something prevalent within our culture? It is not. I'm first generation homeschooler in my family. But speaking of family members and friends, I think it's getting to be more mainstream. People are talking more. I think a lot of people in our culture look as education as a form of status, and if you need to make it high in life, you need to be educated, you need to go to school. In our culture, ever since we're small, it's go to school so you can be successful. A lot of our family members who immigrated to the U.S. is one of the main reasons is to give our children a better education. And that's kind of ingrained in our community, in our families. Like, you have to have education to be successful. And with homeschooling, I think now more of people in our community who are established within, the community, are bilingual, understand what's happening in schools, are kind of seeing what's happening. We don't like it. It's not our culture.
Yeah, it's totally against what we
believe in. We believe God, family, hard work, and a lot of stuff that's happening. I think a lot of people in our community are catching on and seeing red flags, and they're like, whoa. And I think that's what's bringing people in our community to the homeschooling.
Yeah, just seeking it. Yeah.
So what exactly do you think they're seeing in the school system? Because obviously we talk about this, and Christina and I have our own. What do you think culturally they're seeing that is different than what they expected? Things are changing in the school system, so they don't like it, and they're pulling. What are those things they don't like?
I think it's all the woke, nonsense that's going on now.
Yeah, no, you can
say that on this podcast.
This is,
the telling boys that they can be girls if that's what they feel. Or cats, yeah.
Yeah.
That's just something that we are totally against. We just don't approve of any of that.
And religious-wise, that goes against,
our Catholic faith. And then in our culture, the nuclear family is like, it's the it thing, mom, dad, kids. It's like something big, and I think kids are coming home and talking about this kind of stuff.
Progressive craziness that's happening.
Yeah, and they're like, what is happening?
Well, because your culture and I feel we've talked about this so many times that I feel a lot of kindred spirit with you guys because, my heritage and my faith, it's very intertwined. Like Ukrainians are very into their religion is part of our heritage and our culture. It's not a separate entity. And I feel like it's very similar for you guys where the Catholicism is an important part of it and your faith is an important part of who you are as a people and how you approach your family. So I think that is actually really important in the homeschool world.
Yeah.
It is.
And why, right?
Yeah, I think more of our community is, our culture is looking into homeschooling because, like I was saying before, we are now uncomfortable, and this is giving us comfort that we can, bring God into our families. We can teach our kids about God. We can give them our moral values, whereas before it's, in the public school system, it's you can't talk about God.
Well, they teach humanism in the public school system, and so it is a religion. It makes no sense to teach, separation of church and state doesn't exist in my brain because they are teaching religion, but it's just not a religion that, is not Catholicism, it's not Christian, it's not Jewish, it's just this we are God kind of thing. And so it is restoring values, the values you guys appreciate back. Homeschooling can restore that for you. Yeah,
definitely.
Not only that, but I believe also bullying. Bullying is just getting worse and worse and worse. I'm pretty sure all of us here got bullied at school.
Yes.
I was bullied, and it's just crazy to me how kids are nowadays. Like, it's just sad.
Well, I think it's because they have, instead of having the parents raising the children, and there's that accountability factor for there's consequences to your actions, you have government raising your children, and they have to be diverse and equitable and inclusive, and so then the accountability factor doesn't happen in a bullying case, And
when you start to separate, church and state, when you separate the morality from education, that's when you start to have more bullying and issues with that. Because even when I did my, because I was an administrator, so when I did my admin work and internship, it was amazing to see how much, unfortunately, you have to let go. You have to allow, you have to give chances, you have to do all these things because, well, you can't sit down and just have a conversation with a kid. I mean, it was, as an administrator, kids would come to me with issues like, this kid did that to that kid. Okay, we sit down and we start to have a conversation and try to work it out. And it's like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. You need to just dole out these like prescribed punishments for the kids. They're not learning anything. They're not coming together and getting better. And then you try to bring in the parents, and the parents are like, not my kid.
No, they can't do anything wrong.
You can't do anything about my kid. Nope, that's for me to handle. It's like, but you're not handling it.
Well, and I think things have really, especially in the accountability factor, it used to be, hey, you're expelled for bullying, or you're sent home, or the principal's getting involved. Now it's come to the principal's office and sit in the chair next to me for whatever. It's almost like a reward.
Sit in the school suspension. Sit in the school
class.
suspension room where there's like 5 other kids in there doing absolutely nothing with a substitute teacher who doesn't actually care.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
That's what the school system is. They really don't care about your kids.
No.
Or they don't want to deal with them and just keep suspending, and it's
And
not.
then, So then that brings me to a different question. So each of you, were any of your kids in public school
Yeah.
Yes.
beforehand? All of you. Okay, but different schools around the Tucson area, right?
Yes.
So, and they're drastically different. I'm going to make that very clear here. I'm sure
From school to school in Tucson,
drastically
there's nothing that's similar about them.
No. And so maybe if we just go around the table and you guys tell us why you decided to homeschool. Like, what was the pivotal reason you decided to finally pull your kids and homeschool? Suzette.
Well, for me, the reason I took the leap to homeschool was my daughter started having medical issues. I had felt the tug to homeschool for a while, but I just didn't think it was possible. But finally, it took that for me to take the leap. My daughter started having medical issues, and I just felt like the school system was failing her. It wasn't helping her. This was back when COVID was, everyone was afraid of COVID. And so my daughter was scheduled for a surgery. It was right after winter break. Her surgeries are in Minnesota, so I had scheduled, the flights, the hotel room. I had booked the hotel, everything. And if she would have caught COVID, they would have, canceled everything, canceled her surgery, and I would have, it just would have been a mess having to postpone everything. So I told the school that I wasn't going to be sending her back right after winter break because of the, I gave them the reasons why it was happening.
You're talking about
legitimate
truancy.
reasons. Yeah.
I know.
And
the
you're starting to itch.
The truancy things happening.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So I didn't send her back. And then while she was recovering, I got a phone call from a truancy officer. And he went at it as soon as I answered the phone. He was telling me how much of a irresponsible parent I was for not taking my daughter to school
without having any background information, I'm sure.
And they knew. I mean, my daughter had a 504 plan. I had let him know beforehand, this is what's going on. She's not going to be returning right after winter break because this is happening during winter. When you guys get back after winter break, she's going to be recovering from the surgery. I asked him to give us, work so that she would stay on track, which they didn't do either.
So you did everything a responsible parent should be doing.
Yes, exactly. And he still called me irresponsible.
That happened in California with former Attorney General Kamala Harris, and I'm serious, and being truant, I'm gonna spit because it makes me interested, and because it makes me so angry because you're doing what's right for your child. They don't know exactly, and you're filling them in on all the little nitty gritty details. But to be truant, if she's still upholding her, what she's supposed to be doing, meeting objectives and standards and stuff like that, then it
doesn't matter because the problem is that we've taken the humanity out of the system. And so by taking humanity out, they're just looking at numbers. They're just looking at dollar signs. They're looking at, if this child is not in a certain number of school days, we are losing funding.
Yeah.
And that becomes the problem. Your child in the government system is no longer an individual who has individual needs and requirements. They're simply a number.
Yeah, and that's actually why I decided not to just take her back anymore, because I said these people obviously do not care about what my daughter is going through, and I do not want to send my kids, both of them. I don't want to send them back to these people that do not care about them. I mean, they had everything there. He didn't take the time to do a little bit of research and see,
or why is she not in school?
Right.
He just
went right on to start accusing me. And he said that because I didn't send her back to school, she was dropped, and I had to go back and I had to re-enroll her in person. And I was like, nope. I'm not doing that. My daughter was recovering. I wasn't about to pick her up, put her in a wheelchair to take her to the school and re-enroll her. And that, I started praying. That was when I remember
I
have no idea how I got to. I was online, and
I actually don't know how you found.
I know how.
I don't know. Yeah,
I know how.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
I do.
Yeah, he led me there.
But just for the viewers that don't understand, if you don't mind me, because it wasn't just like she had a tonsillectomy. No. Like Susie needed brain surgery. So we're talking something that is major and life altering, and that nobody should be telling you can't have your kid.
At no point should a truant officer have ever called and said anything.
No. But it's similar to the case in California with the girl that had celiac disease, and then she couldn't. She had like a stroke or a seizure in the hospital and was truant, and then they ended up arresting the parents, and it was this big deal.
I saw that.
Yep.
So back in 1995, when I was homeschooling, 93, sorry. Back in 1993, when I was homeschooling in high school, before we fully unenrolled and I became a homeschooler, I had, in my freshman year of high school, I had gotten sick. I had gotten like really severe mono. I was homesick for about a month and a half. And I was in all the honor rolls classes, every honors class, EP classes, everything. And my parents did everything they were supposed to. They tried to get the work from the school. Yep. I was supposed to have a person come to the house once, like a home tutor come once a week, which was ridiculous. But the teachers stopped sending material. They stopped sending the work. And then we had a truant officer come to our house because they were like, well, you're not turning in work. I'm like, can't turn in work that the teachers didn't send.
Yep.
And it became a whole issue. And that was the first time when my mom actually contacted HSLDA, and we officially unenrolled, and I became a homeschooler from that situation. Same thing, medical problem. I am homesick. I am not allowed to come to school. I'm trying to do the work. They're not doing their side of it, and yet
because
it was just
money
enough. It was.
Yeah, because if you're not in school for so many days, and we know this very well, then the district doesn't get the funding for the kid. So,
and this has been happening, but like same thing has been happening for decades.
Yes, our point is that it is dehumanizing. It's not fostering the child and the whole child, and that's what they tell you they're doing, and it's really not. It's the opposite. Yeah, because you're just a number. And Susie's not just a number. She's an exceptional.
Oh my goodness.
She's
amazing.
Kid. Yeah.
Thank you.
So then, I remember our first conversation we had. I remember that. She was so nervous, and look at where you are now. Yeah. It's amazing. And little Sebastian's a hoot, man.
I know. He's incredible.
Yeah, he is a great kid. All right, Lisette, why did you decide to homeschool?
So many reasons. Where do I start? Well, kind of piggybacking off what Suzette said, I have two boys. Both my boys have IEPs, had IEPs. My little guy has his IEP he has severe anxiety. He gets these really bad anxiety attacks. So when COVID hit, they were doing the online learning. I saw a lot of red flags on online where I was emailing principals back and forth. So that's kind of where my curiosity started with homeschooling. Then when they were able to go back, I remember, hey, the kids can go back, but they got to wear masks. And I was like, I don't know. My oldest was like, it's fine, Mom. It's only going to be 3 hours. I want to go. Okay.
3 hours you're breathing in your own spit.
Yeah. It was only...
we all know the lack thereof science behind that. There was no science behind that.
Yeah. Well, I had already known there wasn't... That's when I started figuring out, what is happening. So I was like, okay, he wants to go back. He's been home. And they went back for half-hour days. And when my little guy was his turn to go back, I remember I told him, hey, can we make a modification on his IEP? He cannot wear a mask. He will have an anxiety attack. They're like, no. And I remember I went to his pediatrician. I got a letter, and the pediatrician was like, hey, he's got severe anxiety. I'm not going to prescribe anxiety meds for a mask. And I remember...
I can't even believe we were...
Yeah, put your kid on anxiety meds so they could wear a mask that actually doesn't do anything.
The last 4 or 5 years have been insane to think back to that. It's nuts.
And I took the letter in, and I remember the principal's like, no, if he's not wearing a mask, he can't come back. And I was like, okay. And I remember I went to the school board, and I presented my letter and everything my pediatrician had given me. And a school board member here in Tucson, very well known, responded to my email and pretty much said, well, once your kid is on school grounds, he's no longer your concern. He is our concern.
There it is, folks.
There you go.
That's the mic drop right there.
And that is exactly it.
Yeah.
They're not your children.
Chills. No, they aren't. When she sent your kids away, they want to.
I
said this one time on Instagram, and I got. Wait, we are on TikTok. You're cutting parental ties. And I said it again. So,
but that's the truth. They don't want you to be the parent. They want to be the parent.
Yep.
And that was my, what is it, sand in the line, no, you do not tell me I don't have rights over my child once he's on school grounds. But there's a lot more. I could probably do a whole episode on everything that happened and I experienced, because I was a PTO parent. I was on the school site council, so I saw a lot of behind the scenes things going on. And
that's something that I want to address. I think all of us were very involved parents, right?
Super involved.
I mean, PTO president. My husband was PTO treasurer, PTO parent, PTO. Like,
I even the principal of my daughter's school, he ended up offering me a job because I was there all the time. And he's like, "You're here all the time, so do you want a job? You might as well get paid for it."
And to have such like a lot of people think like, oh well, homeschoolers, you know, they just. If you just got involved in your school, you can make a change. No, you can't.
No.
The problem is that you, unfortunately, you can try, but
it's like boiling a frog in a pot.
It is.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And maybe now because we're dismantling the Department of Education, but that's another conversation.
Right.
We'll see what happens. But yes, that is huge. So you left because of
when I got that reply, that email from that school board member telling me, "Oh, once your kid's on school grounds, he's no longer your concern," and
oh man,
that was I'm out.
Yeah.
And when I remember when I went to pull him out and I went to fill out the paperwork, draw him out, principal comes out of our office and she's like, "You're really leaving?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm filling out the papers and she's like, "You're really going to take him out? You're going to homeschool?" "Yep, I'm going to do it." She's like, "Well, maybe we can sit down and we can make a modification to the IEP." Right away, I was like,
she's too little too late.
She was seeing dollar signs because I know children with IEPs are worth a lot more to the school system, and I was so upset. I felt so betrayed, and because everything I had done for that school, all the volunteer work, like I just to this day feel betrayed by the system I thought was there to help my children.
Yeah, I think we all feel that way, that our kids they just dropped the ball on our kids. And, like,
but once again, they do that because they don't care.
Yes.
I mean,
they act like they care.
And not to say that there aren't individuals within the system, that do care, but it's struggling. And I think you're seeing, like, I know personally teachers that I've worked with, more and more leaving because
the
ones that generally care, like, they feel either stuck because okay, well, I'm like 2 or 3 years out from retirement, so what am I going to do at this point? Or they're leaving because they're just like, I cannot stand this anymore. The bureaucracy is not allowing me to care, not allowing me to do what I know these kids need, and that's part of why I left too. It's like I want to help these kids, I want to do well by them, but you can't.
Nope.
Your hands are tied.
Nope.
So
all right, Priscilla, you're on. Why'd you leave?
Just little red flag here and there.
Yep.
Like bullying, like you guys mentioned earlier. Identifying like you're a cat, it just blows my mind. The way
it blows my mind too.
I mean, when I was in school, I think bullying has always existed, but now it's just worse, and everything starts at home. So I feel like parents are working 24/7. The kids are raising themselves alone. So they're doing all these things at school, to get attention. And, it's not the kids' fault because the parents are not taking care of them. But so, I just had incidents, and I just saw how the system does not care. Like if you would go to the principal's office and address the situation, like they would just make up excuses. And they're, "Oh, we're gonna fix it," and then again, like it would happen again, and they're like, "No, they're gonna be okay." So it just that.
And then you finally left.
Yeah, I left.
So was it daunting to the three of you? This is my next, because it is, for Christina and I think it was less daunting. I'm going to be honest with you.
Having an education background made it be like, okay, at least I know that the education portion I've got.
Yeah, and it's wildly different, but it wasn't as scary for us to be like, no, I can teach my kids all of these things at home. But for you guys, like you swam way upstream, and you're not only fighting like a cultural kind of aspect within your family. I'm sure you've gotten pushback within your family for your decision to homeschool because it's not something that is culturally prevalent. Or appropriate, I guess. So why is that? Why is there this, why isn't it appropriate to homeschool? Like, what do you guys think?
I think it's because they think you need a
Teacher's degree.
Yes,
A teaching degree.
yes, because you're not. And I mean, I didn't go to college. I was gonna go. Well, I did go, but I never got a degree. And so my family does bash at me and say, "What are you doing? Do you know what you're doing?" Yes, I do. I did my research. I have a co-op group that have been helping me. I know what I'm doing, and they're my kid.
Yep. That's the biggest
no
thing.
one knows your kids better than you.
Exactly. That's
kids.
I was blessed that that's what my mom told me. She said, "No one knows your kids more than you do."
Nope.
And because I was scared when I told my family that I was going to homeschool. I said, "Oh my God, they're going to flip." Like, and I was so surprised, and my heart melted when my mom told me that. She says, "Nobody knows your kids more than you. You know what's right for them." And so I think I've heard some of the stories, but I think I've been blessed that my family does support me, is more supportive, with me throughout this. I mean, I have gotten, like the little backhand remarks, but I don't let them get to me.
Very strong convictions. So within religiously and with your faith and family values, you guys have
and spousal support
too. Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah,
super blessed to have that. When I pulled out my boys, my husband pretty much like your mom said, well, he said, "You're with the boys more than I am. I'm working. If you think this is right for the boys, I'm with you 100%. And it has been a blessing. So before coming here and talking to my husband, I asked him, I'm like, what's the biggest thing, pro, con with homeschooling? And then he's like, well, honestly, he's like, ever since you pulled out the boys, I know I work a lot. He's like, but he feels that he's got closer and been able to have more experiences with the boys.
It makes me so happy because your relationships do get stronger.
Yeah. So much stronger.
I mean, boys are hunting with dad.
Yep.
Archery as a family. We're traveling together. My little guy right away, he's like, "Oh, Mom, the traveling. We've been so many places. We're camping." So we're doing a lot of stuff together as a family. But my family in general, my siblings are kind of quiet, don't say anything. My mom, I was lucky, was super supportive and was like, "You're smart. I know you're doing the right thing," kind of like your mom. Super supportive, but once again, from other family members, I kind of get like, "Oh my gosh, you homeschool. It's like the kids are not at school," or I get these looks, and I know, like, I'm reading what you're saying, like I know what you just say it, but they don't. But I know there's a lot of curiosity within my family because I've had family members, a handful of them, ask me like, "Hey, how do I get started?" So I know there's curiosity, and then there's some kind of are just on the sidelines looking, I think, waiting to see if we mess up somewhere along the line. Yeah. Because if your kids are going to be something, they have to go to school, you have to have an education, and you need to, know what you're doing. You don't know, like Priscilla says.
And I think it goes back to that, like the
culture.
The culture, that you have to go to school in order to be successful. Like, there in Mexico, you don't have the opportunities here, whereas, here, if you don't have an education, you have the opportunity to succeed. If you're a hard worker, if you have good ethics, I mean, you can be a successful person. Over there, it's, if you don't have a degree, like, they won't even give you the opportunity to
prove yourself,
to try and succeed. Yeah.
So there's definitely like this whole atmosphere of status, kind of like you have to go to school to make something of yourself.
I think that comes into also like coming in as like, I'm a first generation American. We were told you have to go to college, you have to do better. Your grandparents came through the most god-awful situations, through World War II and everything, to come over to this country to give you a better life. Don't blow it.
Yes.
That was that expectation. And to have to turn around and now tell our kids, like, hey, I'm not putting that on your shoulders. But and I don't feel negative towards my family, because that's how we were raised. That was how we were told. But like, I think there's that cultural aspect of you're expected to to do better. You're expected to have your kids do better than the generation before, and did they made those sacrifices for you? Why aren't you using them?
Yes.
No, and they programmed it to saying that if you're going to do better, you have to get an education.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily true. You know, at least it's not here.
And I think also a reason for a lot of the Hispanic community not homeschooling is because not everyone, but there is a lot of them that don't speak English.
Yes.
And so they feel like they need to send their kids to a professional to teach. It's like, how am I going to teach my kids a language that I don't know, or you know, it's a second language to me. It's not.
Interesting.
Definitely like a language barrier. Being so close to the border, I mean, there's a lot of just only Spanish-speaking parents, and they want their children to be bilingual, and the only way it's going to happen is if they send them to school. So definitely.
Interesting. I didn't even think about the language barrier. We're so close to the border, but you guys are all bilingual, you know, and your kids are bilingual.
Yeah.
I want my kids to be bilingual too. You need to come teach Spanish to the class. All of them.
When I talk to my boys in Spanish, they know I mean business. You guys
That's like when I start using Ukrainian to my nose.
When you use their full name.
you use the full name. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well then what do you think in your experience has been like the good, the bad, and the ugly of your homeschooling journey so far? I mean, you've got to have some good moments, right? Some like aha moments, and then maybe some moments where you're like, this might not be working, or you know, that kind of thing. What do you think, Priscilla?
Well, you know, I came and then I left.
Yep.
And it's crazy to me that I came back sooner than later,
I was so excited.
because I thought I was going to be back, I don't know, maybe 5 years from now. I didn't think I was going to. I literally left in January of this year, and now I'm back. And it's funny because Juliana was the first one that I took out, and I was homeschooling him alone. But it was just rough. It was hard. I just didn't have the patience, and I was one of those mom, like, I don't want to be with my kids. And now I'm like, I regret that. I'm like, I enjoy being around them now. And now I have the 4 of them at home, and
it changes your dynamic a whole bunch. Yep.
And it's going good right now. I yesterday I had a dentist appointment, and one of my twins was like, I was gone maybe like for 2 hours, and she was like, Mom, I miss you.
Aww.
Which
See?
is,
It's restoring family values. It's restoring that family unit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it was funny to me, and like it was cute too, because I'm like, you miss me? I was only gone for 2 hours. But so yeah, this time around, I think I'm better prepared because I have you guys. And where was I gonna go with this?
I think culturally too, like when Lisette met Christina, and I'm trying to figure out if Suzette came on board before Lisette or is the same time period. But I
think the same time.
It was around the same time.
We all came the same time.
But I love it because it's actually created a new dimension within our homeschool group. So it culturally, we are, I mean, if you can see that, Christina, we are close to the border, and we are different demographically than you could say Tennessee or something like a homeschool co-op in Tennessee. Right. And so it has created more and more of a Hispanic community within our own homeschool group. So culturally, our kids are
large population, and it's great.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. And I love it. But it has grown over the last couple years.
And also another thing, when I first started last year, I really didn't have the support of my husband, which I think that was the hardest.
Yes.
So that's why I think I struggled a lot, like trying to teach Julian. So so I left, and now like I have his support 100%, which is very good. So like everyone else who has something I say, like I don't care anymore.
He backs you up now.
Yeah, he does.
And sometimes it is hard. I remember, my husband, who when we first started talking about it, he was like, "Really? Really?" Well, but his public school experience was fantastic.
Yep. And
he had great teachers. Mine. He had like a great experience going through it, and still came from that culture of no, you have to do this.
Yep.
And then it took me talking it through with him and explaining my background and everything, and him seeing it, like trying it for a little bit and going, oh wow, this is better. And now he is like Mr. Homeschool Dad. He's currently teaching math, science. He's doing a full science experiment today, teaching history, teaching math. I mean, like he's all in.
But you just have to, we've been conditioned, and culturally from everybody has been conditioned to thinking that this is the way we're supposed to do things. And so like even my husband was very similar. He enjoyed his schooling. I did not. So it was just an opposite kind of experience altogether, but he wasn't on board at first, and then I was like, yeah, but this, just trust me.
Get on board.
You
need to get on board, buddy.
Now you should hear him talking like, you have to pull your kids. He will tell something, get them out of the system, because it's going to screw them up.
My husband was a little hesitant at first too, and especially him because he comes, like his family are all involved in education. His dad was the principal of a school. His mom was a secretary at the school. His aunts were, all of them, his aunts and uncles, they were all teachers. So for him, it was like, are you sure? I don't know about this.
He's breaking more than generational boundaries. He's breaking all.
And what sold him finally was seeing everything that's going on, all of that gender nonsense. He was concerned about Sebastian and Susie not being social. Yeah, because that's what everyone worries about. Yeah, that is what everyone worries about. The social aspect, like what are my kids gonna do? And once he saw that I found you guys this great community, he was like, okay.
Well, there's a very big difference between sending your kids into public school and forcing them to assimilate, which is what happens in public school, and that is what they think socialization is. You're literally forcing them to assimilate into a group of kids that they might not get along with. They're the same age as them, so that they can't even, you're not supposed to do that.
I mean, look around the table. We are all friends, and we are not even close to being the same age.
No.
Like,
I don't know.
We're not.
No, we're not.
We're not.
I know.
As your elder, I would like just remember to respect your elders.
I'm
okay.
Elder.
Yeah,
but I'm eldest.
Well, the point is that you have this whole idea.
It's not real life.
Well, they preach diversity.
Yes.
They preach diversity in age and diversity in cultures and diversity in ideas, and really you don't get that in the school system. You get it homeschooling. And so then the kids flourish because they are around older kids and younger kids and different ethnicities and different backgrounds, and
they can all work together. They can all get along. They can all just.
That's where it's at.
It's the actual diversity.
Here is we also get to pick who our kids socialize with.
Yep.
We get to pick our village.
That's why
I homeschool because I've seen a village and I don't want it raising my children.
Seen it.
And that was when Priscilla was saying that she didn't, there was one point where she didn't like spending time with her kids. I think maybe that had something to do with it, that her kids were in the public school system and probably picking up,
habits.
the habits there. And now that she's homeschooling them, they're going after what you tell them, your principles, your morals, and so now maybe
and
that's why.
it makes them feel more secure too. When they know where they came from and that family is really solid, then they're going to be better people.
We just had a book club this past Monday, and I run the teen group, and the teens are reading Screw Tape Letters. And one of the things that it came up in this chapter, it was actually your son's chapter. It was a little bit of an uncomfortable chapter because it was talking about sex and marriage, but life in general. And then one of the questions that I asked the kids, and I asked Eli, was the whole premise is that the devil is trying to get you to worry about the fears of the future. Keep your eyes on the future. Keep your eyes on the future. And think about things way down there and start getting worried about them and scared about them. And what does that do? And he thought for a while. And that's why I love when Eli has to respond, because he stops and he thinks.
Yes, he does.
And he pauses. And I love that, because a lot of the kids just blurt. And I'm like, no, reflect for a second. And he goes, well, if we're always thinking about the future and we're always worried about the future, we don't get to realize that we have our family and we have the support now. And I'm like,
Yep.
bingo, kid. Bingo. Like, and that turned into this big discussion on, I said to the kids, I was like, I know you're scared about the future, that you're going to be graduating, you're going to be off on your own. And he's like, can I do it? Am I ready? And I'm like, do you have to be? And he goes, I guess I really don't, because I have my family. Yep. And that right there, I think, is the difference between homeschooled kids versus, the government schooled kids, is that government pushes, you have to do this on your own. You're not an adult.
Novel.
It is. Like, get out there, separate the ties from your family, separate the ties from everybody around, your support system, and go.
Yep.
And homeschooling brings that support system back to that family unit, back to each other, back to this village that we've created, because we all have those similar morals and values, and we want to work together. And I think that is giving our kids a huge
Well, it is, because
bonus.
they're going to be more successful because they know who they are. So that's a big difference. It's like, even me, I switched my major like 3 or 4 times because I didn't know who I was, because you're conditioned to thinking just go off and go get a college degree. Whereas when you have them at home, you can really figure out who your kids are, and they know who they are before they go out to the real world, and probably at a younger age.
Yes.
Well, Eli.
I think. Yeah, I know.
Eli,
like a mechanic.
17, and he's got it all planned out. He wants to open up an old, resto mod shop, do resto mods with cars. Kid's a genius with cars.
Yes, he is.
He's learned how to weld. He's making,
Archery bow holders.
Yes, archery bow holders.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, last night he was sitting down pricing out materials because he wants to make some to sell some in our group, because I told him, hey, I think there's other families interested.
So he's budgeting, which they don't teach.
No, yeah.
They don't teach entrepreneurship. They don't teach how to actually run a business.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and then Eli, too, part of the good, bad, ugly, good, in our homeschool experience, he's taken... he's on his 5th financial literacy class right now. And in one of those classes, he got to participate at the U of A financial face-off with other homeschoolers, and they got 3rd place. I mean, they participated. They were the only homeschool group. I mean, that was awesome to see that and see him, like, working his skills that he's learning. But I mean, he's 17 going on 30, because
I know he really
is an old soul.
He's a super old soul. Yes. And then when we get together with family members, grandparents, like, we'll go, grandma, stop by after, we're running around with our homeschool stuff. And he literally will ditch his cousins to go sit down with grandpa outside. Hey, grandpa, let's go check the oil to the car. And it's like, Eli, are you ready? Hold on, mom. I'm like talking to my grandpa. Like, bonds with grandparents. Like, he rather
do that than be on a screen
device
showing like
talking
that.
about nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Skibbity.
Like, when we go to
just gonna throw it out. Not sure what
Please
that.
don't.
Yeah.
Same like when we go down to Mexico to our family ranch. Like, he loves it because he's around his uncles. The cowboys are out there cowboying. They're tagging cattle. He's learning that. I mean, he's learning so much. And he's himself said, Mom, when I was asked, telling him about the podcast, he's like, Mom, everything I've done, I don't think I would have ever been able to do if I was in regular school. Like, I wouldn't be able to work on my cars. I wouldn't be welding. I wouldn't be doing archery. So he's aware of the fact that it's a blessing.
Awesome.
And like he said, well, if I'd have to say the bad mom was the first year, our first year was a hot
yes.
Yeah.
So actually that's a good thing to talk about, because when I say it wasn't daunting for Christina and I, even though we had our ups and downs, when you first start homeschooling and you don't, it can be crazy.
It was crazy. We didn't know what we were doing. I thought I knew what I was doing, but we changed curriculum so many times. I mean, we tried different co-ops that didn't work out for us. We were running around a lot. Eli was like, I just want to go back to school and see my friends. I mean, and the friends he wanted to go back to see, he doesn't even keep in touch with anymore.
Yep.
And he's like, man, I thought my friends were everything, Mom. And it's like, he's like, they're gone. I don't see them anymore. He's like, my friends are the co-op kids, like my family. So it's the first year, it was just trying to get adjusted. What are we doing? And right now it's smooth sailing. Yep. And my boys love it. I mean, my little guy, he's like, I get to sleep in, my cousins don't. And he's like, I get to cook whenever I want, my cousins don't. It's good. It's been good.
My son's happy he gets to wear underwear all day.
That's awesome. My son's happy he doesn't have to wear underwear all day. How's that? They're opposite and they're going to be friends forever, and it's hilarious to me.
Oh my god.
What about you, Priscilla? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Have you had any really good moments besides your kids getting more attached to you?
More good moments.
Or a bad moment?
I think the worst, like I said in the beginning, that my husband wasn't supportive, and people were telling him what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
They were telling him. So hearing that, he was like, what are you doing? So I just got frustrated, but now we know what we're doing. And I think also my parents not supporting, and they think, and my brother too, he's like, what are you doing with your kid?
Yeah. That's tough.
You don't know what you're doing. You didn't even graduate college.
You're gonna prove them all wrong.
Yeah, and then your son is the one who's winning the science
experiment.
So we had science class on Monday.
It was both our boys.
And their two boys, beat out everybody for the best design for the physics experiment that the challenge that we did.
Well, because
so
they're not being boxed in.
They're not.
They are able to really think.
And to see them all come out of their shells and to start interact and how they interact with everyone, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
It's beautiful. Have you seen Ryan's latest fashion? I love you, Ryan, by the way. But we're definitely, he is totally does not care what anybody thinks, and it is cool to him, and so that is what I love it so much.
And we all just accept each other. It's it's crazy to think our kids are all different ages, but they can get along. They can. It's great to see how, even though age-wise they're different, culturally they're different, some of them are religiously different, but yet
I think that we all have a really, really strong faith in God, and so that's something that is huge. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic or Judeo-Christian. I'm the only Judeo-Christian sitting
You're sitting at a table of Catholics.
But this is okay.
Christian.
Okay. So it's definitely, that is pivotal for us all, though, is that faith component, because it does foster what is not happening in the school system.
So let me say something in regards to that.
Yeah.
All homeschool moms and their kids are not behaving. If you don't behave, I'm going to send you back to school. There was one day we're driving by this school, and Esteban's in the back seat, and I'm just like, you didn't finish what I told you to do. And I'm like, oh, look, there's a school, I can just go in there and I could register you if you don't want to do the work. And then one of the oh my gosh moments in homeschooling, this was it, because as we're driving by, and he's like, I wouldn't want to go there, Mom. You know why? Because I know God's not there, and God's here where I'm with you. And I was like, oh my God. I'm driving, and my tears were my kid just, he said that that
because we
so
want
much.
that for our children. And if you send them to the school, you're undoing everything, and it's really hard. I could pull up some stats, but I think it's 30% of teens actually believe, or less than that, it's got to be less than that, actually believe in God. And if they do believe in God, it is a very spiritual, metaphysical kind of
there's something up there, I don't know,
happening, the stars align, and it's this cosmic kind of thing, but it's very rare. And that's because we need this pullback it is not only trajectory of homeschooling is becoming more popular just for educational purposes and getting them out of all the woke stuff, but it's also restoring family values and faith.
But my aha moments have been in regards to faith in God. Another one was during a science. We were doing atoms, and I don't know what it was. I can't remember. But it was my oldest, Eli. He just said, he's sitting there, once again, he's quiet, looking up, and I'm like, Eli, what do you want to say? And then he's like, Mom, I'm God. God lives within me. We were not talking religiously, but we were talking atoms and, forms and this.
He's making the connection.
Yeah, and he just made the connection. So that was another, oh my gosh, he's like, I'm a God. I'm God. Like, he's in me.
He's part of, like, he created me. He is in me. And
and
that's
I was
awesome.
like, oh my gosh.
That's a
like,
hard connection to make, you know?
Yeah.
Especially for young kids.
And when you're around a bunch of kids all the time on the school bus, they're not going to make that connection.
No.
And that's the other, that right there. I've heard our kids have these conversations.
They have.
And it, like, you think, like, you'll sneak up on these teenage boys thinking they're having these crazy, and
it's
like,
either politics or religion.
It's politics and religion. And I'm like, wow, our kids are free to, and they're free to disagree too, and say, okay, well, I think of it like this. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of it like that. Huh, I think of it like this. Oh, wow, okay. You know, like, they're having these critical thinking conversations and learning to...
And learning who they are. Yeah.
Learning to learn themselves and learn each other and have empathy towards each other. That they don't get that anywhere else.
Going back to the beautiful part of homeschooling, I think that has been one of the most beautiful parts, that we get to incorporate God into this.
Yes.
That's something that's been very important to me. And also, like, the time that I've gotten with my kids.
Get that time back.
I got, especially, you know, I was at one moment very afraid that I was not going to have time with.
I know. Yeah. Oh, you can't
do that. Sorry.
Don't do it. No, because it is. You had a different situation than anybody could possibly, and it's amazing what has happened. And Susie's still with us. Yep.
Thank God.
And she's
you know,
awesome.
she probably would have been incredibly, if you had stayed in the public school system, in the stress of that, maintaining that, you know, lifestyle would have been not good for her healing.
I always say that everything that happened to us, them dropping Susie from school, was a blessing in disguise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it brought me
it was
here.
God pushing you to do something different.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And God had always left, like, little breadcrumbs for me, like, you know, leading me to this.
Yep.
But I mean, if it took that for me to finally listen and take the leap to homeschool.
Yep. Well, I mean, I have a bunch of questions, but I actually have one question for all three of you, because we all work different jobs. You know what I mean? Like, how do we make it by? Because a lot of parents, especially, I would say, and if I'm overstepping, but like culturally, they're like, there's no way we can make this work financially. Like, our kids have to go to school, right? It's not a privileged thing necessarily, it's a sacrifice. So like, you do hair
on the
like
weekends,
every weekend, right?
Yeah, I do. I work with a team of awesome girls, and
Yep.
I do hair for formal events, and then we're business owners. My husband has a business, but I help him when I can with that. But most of the time, it's me and the boys. But yeah, I do the hair thing to bring a little more in for groceries or...
So it was a decision, and you knew that you would have to work to make the decision, because I get that constantly. Christina and I get it constantly.
But I can't do it because I work. I have to work.
Yes.
You can. It's going to look different than it does right now. It may be more challenging, but it can be done.
Yes. If there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly.
And you bake cakes.
I bake cakes.
Beautiful
Amazing cakes.
I love her
So
cakes.
tasty.
Yeah.
I have to make one for
yeah.
this week.
Every week, it's like every week I text her.
Yeah,
Hey,
she's like, you know what I'm texting about.
Yeah.
Whose birthday?
My stepdaughter.
Oh,
22.
okay.
Yeah, so I'm like, I need a cake this week. I'm like, you know what? I'm texting you. She's like, what flavor do you want?
I'm like, you already know what I'm gonna
I
ask.
love that culturally you guys have added a different element to even my children's lives. And so that's why I was excited to have the three of you on, is because now, you know, they say things in Spanish.
They do.
Like, yes. And well, Summer's favorite line is, oh my gosh, or, you know,
Ay, Dios
she's
mío. Ay, Dios mío, yeah.
yeah, but they say things in Spanish. You know, Jace loves quesadillas more than he's ever loved quesadillas before, because Lisette cooks him quesadillas. And so it's just been a huge blessing.
He was introduced to his favorite bakery.
No, I made him bakery. Yes.
Oh,
I took him to Lisette.
yeah. I heard all about
He
it.
said he wanted to go there for his birthday.
This is a bakery. Yeah, it was adorable. But culturally, it's important for them, and not just to, like, know their friends in school. Like in public school, I had friends that were all different, races, but they didn't get the experience that they're getting here.
No, because they all know each other's parents. They know, they've been to each other's houses. Like they know that there's different expectations, and that's amazing. Like, it's amazing that they're able to go into other people's houses and start to recognize what life is like for others and have that empathy towards a different culture and understanding towards a different culture. Yep. And that makes them better people.
Yep, it really does. It really does.
I wanted to say something. So Alex, when I took him out, he really didn't want to leave the school system, but then
Alex is your oldest.
Yes, my oldest.
I love
14.
Alex. He's very sweet.
And we went to that teen night, I want to say, at your house. That was amazing. We had so much fun. And then we went to the book club, and then he started liking it. We've been coming more. And the other day at the book club, at the science, he was just
in his element.
He was like, Mom, I had so much fun. I love this.
Good.
And then
awesome.
One of his friends from school, he was like, Mom, William wants you to homeschool him. Yeah, he's like, oh, wow. I can talk to his mom, but like Suzanne mentioned, she really doesn't speak English, so she wouldn't.
Interesting.
There's language barriers.
Yeah, not only that, but I think the Mexican culture, we're so brainwashed, I say, right?
Yeah.
Brainwashed, I could say, because we grew up like, you need to go to school. This is the only way. And most of the things a question that I've been getting lately is like, so how do you test your kid? Like, how do you know if they're ready to go? I'm like, that really doesn't matter.
I don't think there's a Hispanic co-op. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, is there?
Hug.
We're close to 50% now, and I'm loving it.
It's awesome. No, but I mean, like, no,
there isn't.
Like a leader because there is a language barrier. There's not a co-op that is like a Spanish speaking.
And I think it's hard to look at other people and go, okay, well, yeah, obviously they're doing it, but they're doing it differently. They don't have the same issues that we have in our culture and in our community. But I think that's what we need to change going forward, is saying, like, first off, homeschooling is not school at home.
No.
And getting that across to anyone is the hardest thing to do.
And beginning.
But it's important. And I think as you guys see it, I think you two have said before that since you've been homeschooling for a few years now, you're starting to see more family members like, oh, all right, those kids are actually pretty darn smart and capable, and
the family's working well together.
The family's better. Like,
they're
not having the same issues that I might be having at home. So I think a lot of it is just going to take time to see the results of the homeschooling families that are successful, and that is just going to be a slow cultural shift.
Yeah.
We just need to kind of keep pushing at it to hopefully.
But you
make
guys
more
are
people.
really you're leading the way. That's why we wanted to have you on. It's because you are leading the way for this new. You're speaking for a bunch of people that may not think that they can homeschool, but they can.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you swam upstream in so many different ways. Breaking down those walls of institutionalized learning.
We had to get through a lot of like our own fears. Like when I first started this, I was like, how am I going to teach my son to read? Like, and then he started reading, and I'm like, I did this. That was me.
It's amazing because it's like, as a homeschool parent, you have to retrain yourself, and you're a lot of people don't realize you're bettering yourself.
You're learning with
them. You're
learning
bettering
so
yourself, and you're also showing them you can learn at any age. You do not need to just have somebody else that, well, this is the only approved person to teach you. You can learn yourself. You can do this. You can do anything you put your mind to. Just buckle down and do it.
And
you
there's
know?
so much support now to
Yes.
do it.
Yes.
I mean, not just with the co-ops, but like you go online and I mean, I joke that you can literally just teach yourself how to be a neurosurgeon by looking
right?
at YouTube videos.
You can literally research almost anything.
Anything.
Well, my kid, that's where he learned how to rebuild a car engine,
Yeah.
all on his own. I mean, he's doing.
But that's a self-driven learner.
Yes.
So you gave him the tools, and then he's like, I'm interested in this. I want to teach myself how to do this. And we live in an environment where he has all of those resources.
and he knows how to find them because
Yeah.
there's things he finds. I'm like, how'd you do that? And he's like, I researched it, Mom.
And I think that's the
Yeah.
the ultimate goal.
Yep,
to,
it is.
Have them be able to teach themselves, give them the tools to do it. How.
I mean, it's to the point where my husband's like, he intimidates me with his mechanical.
Mechanical knowledge.
He changed the starter out in my car
That's
at
pretty good.
17. I was pretty impressed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
That's
something
awesome.
else.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Well, this was incredible.
I know. We need some margaritas. I don't like
Need some
tequila.
margaritas.
I don't like tequila. Chimichangas. Chimichangas. Then that would have been awesome.
Way to go out to eat after this.
We have to add some music to it. Okay.
But thank you guys for coming. This was
I know.
super
Love you. Thank
amazing.
you.
Yes.
Yep.
And until next time.
Yep. Signing
Thank
off.
you for
Well, how
having
do you
us.
say? Adios.
Gracias. Bye.
Gracias.
Adios.
Adiós. Hasta la
amigos.
próxima.
Adios, amigos. Join the revolution, guys. We are 5 million homeschoolers in the U.S. and growing, breaking down the walls of institutionalized learning.
And remember, if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and most importantly, share with others and help us get the word out about the beauty and freedom of homeschooling.
And speak up. Go grab yourself some cool merch that we designed while you're at it.
See you next time.